Parfait. Bonjour tout le monde. Good day, everybody. I hope that you are doing well during that moment of crisis. We are very happy, Councillor Rawlson and the organizing team, that you have agreed to participate to that small business roundtable. It's actually quite a significant and diverse group of participants that we have today. Comme je vous l'ai dit auparavant, nous allons avoir une modération qui est bilingue. Donc c'est ça, donc je vais passer sûrement du français à l'anglais de temps en temps, surtout quand viennent les questions, ou sinon faire un peu de traduction. Alors, merci beaucoup encore une fois. So, as you know, a survey has circulated and was published before that roundtable, a survey that gave us a good insight of some of the challenges that entrepreneurs and business in the Councillor Rawlson's King ward are experiencing. So many of the questions will be based on those questions, on these surveys. So, and also your input, the problematics that you will be raising will be gathered by my colleague here, Nathalie, in a report that Rawlson King will be providing later on. And finally, I would like all of you, you can see that we are all in a very familiar surrounding. We are all at home. So please, let's take it as if we were at home. So be open. When questions will be raised, be open. We are in a crisis, in a time of crisis right now. And because we're in a time of crisis, we are vulnerable. However, I believe that it's when we're vulnerable that we find actually, we readjust. We are in a survival mode, so we readjust. And in the questions and recommendations that you'll be providing, it will be an opportunity to readjust our way of working as businesses. Alors, what I will be doing, I will go through very quickly through the list of participants, and then I will let Rawlson King take the microphone. And so we have here today, so Michael Wood from the Ottawa Special Events, Chris Penton from the Beechwood Market, Bruce Firestone. Is he here? Oh, hello there. Hi. Welcome on the platform.
Hi, Sandra. How are you?
I'm good.
Nice of you and Councillor to invite me today. I have a quick question for you. Are you going to record this session?
Yes, so just so everybody knows, it is actually being simulcast on Facebook Live right now. So it's on my Facebook page, and it will also end up on YouTube at a certain point.
Perfect. Nous avons aussi Nathalie Carrier from the Vanier BIA. Nous avons aussi Luc Thermonvil from the Ottawa Black Business Alliance, OBBA, right? We have also James Patsula from Compass Rose. Oh, you're right here, yes. Sonia Elliot, Royal Lepage. Hello. We have also, is he here? Mr. Bachir Hage. He's not here yet.
So that's Chef Butch from a wonderful pizza place called Stuffed. Unfortunately, he has provided his regrets. His pizza parlor on St. Laurent is still open, and he's unfortunately alone at the store, so he can't participate. But maybe this is a shout out for some of the best pizza in Ward 13. He makes a nice pizza pie, and he would have wanted to be with us, but he can't.
Oh, well, he would be able to actually follow us live and provide his questions or his comments later on. And also we have Dr. Colbran Marjerrison from the Beechwood Naturopathy. Hello, she was, hi. And finally, I can see that Mr. Is it a Mr. or Miss? Jabez Arkaifie from Royal Bank of Canada.
Hi, it's Mr.
It's
Jabez.
Mr. Hi. Hi. It's because we cannot see you.
I apologize. My webcam is not working today, but I'm happy to join you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. And finally, and which is very good, we have our government representative. We have Councillor Mathieu Fleury from the Rideau-Vanier ward.
Bonjour, bonjour à tous.
Bonjour, bonjour. We have Councillor Tim Turney from the Beacon Hill-Cyrville ward. Bonjour.
Oui,
I
bonjour.
saw him. Yes.
Oui, hello.
Hello. And last but not least, we have our member, our MPP, Lucille Collard, with us. Bonjour, bonjour. Nous étions supposés aussi avoir une représentante du bureau de Madame Mona Fortier.
Oui, je crois que Stéphane Béguet
Je
du
fais la représentante.
Ah, monsieur, oh, le représentant. Désolé, désolé, désolé.
Essayez d'affiner ma voix.
Alors, which is really good, you know, having actually those different level of government actually being present.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Being present during that that exchange will actually be filling the, how could I say that, will be feeding the coordination mechanism that Mr. Rawlson King will be developing in his advocacy plan, right?
Yes, yes.
Alors, sans plus tarder, what I will do, I will ask Mr. Rawlson King to be providing the opening remark.
Yes. Well, thank you, Sandra. Good afternoon and welcome to our Small Business Roundtable. I'm Rawlson King, Ottawa City Councillor for Ward 13, Rideau-Rockcliffe. And I'd like to welcome all the business owners, advocates, and elected officials participating today. We all want to work as one team in this crisis, and that's why I'm so overjoyed that everybody can join us today. I'd like to also thank all the people who are watching us on Facebook Live. If you have questions for us, please comment at the end of the session or try to send us some text messages on the Facebook Live window. And if we have any time, we'll try to answer those questions either online or we will reach out to you after if we can't get to all the questions. As you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought many changes to every facet of the lives of Ottawa residents. These are challenging times for everyone. Many local businesses have had to close their brick and mortar stores, but many are adapting to continue to serve their customers during this period of uncertainty. As an elected official representing a dynamic community, along with my colleagues, Councillor Turney and Fleury, and along with Lucille, our MPP, and Mona Fortier, our MP, I want to assure you that we are committed to helping our businesses and that we see that many of Ottawa's local businesses remain committed and resilient. And in fact, we often chat about that as a team for Ottawa-Vanier, as elected officials. We meet on a regular basis each week, and we talk about all of these issues, and we relay a lot of concerns of our constituents. So we think it's important to listen to the constituents, relay those concerns, and that's one of the reasons why we're having this roundtable. You know, and that's why, as a city, you know, we've come together to ask our residents to make a difference by supporting small businesses as well during this public health crisis, in order to ensure their continuity as businesses and their vitality. The City of Ottawa is currently leading a campaign in partnership with a special municipal task force to support local businesses during the pandemic. The campaign encourages residents to buy local from our rich diversity of small businesses. And you know, we have to acknowledge that economic growth in the national capital has been historically driven by federal government and high tech. But the fastest growing sector of Ottawa's economy over the past number of years has increasingly been small business. which constitutes nearly 30% of the city's gross domestic product. As a result, small business is an influential factor in driving Ottawa's growth. And we expect the coronavirus outbreak to create a severe economic challenge, which potentially could contribute to the loss of many small businesses, thereby undermining economic recovery after the pandemic passes. In this unprecedented period, it is incumbent upon all of us to stand together with entrepreneurs and small businesses who are doing everything possible in the face of a significant challenge. This is why government has been stepping up at all levels to provide support. And I think that we see that mirrored. I see Matt on this call, Tim on this call, Lucille on this call, Stefan, who is a representative of Mona on this call. And we've all been trying to work together to really relay that message that we want to work together. At the municipal level, we have been deferring property taxes and water bills. At the federal level, a wide array of programs have been launched and continue to evolve to support businesses facing hardship as a result of COVID. We are here to listen. So I'm not here to talk. After this, I might say some wrap-up words, but we're here to really listen to you, the small business, the business owners, the entrepreneurs. And we want to ensure that we do that so that we can respond to the challenges and make improvements. And I believe we can make a difference by supporting business, which is what all levels of government have been doing. So I'd really like to turn it back over to Sandra. I want to thank you for participating from the get-go on this roundtable. And I invite people on Facebook Live to provide their comments to my office, specifically about their concerns about the challenges that are facing their businesses. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Rawlson. Alors, sans plus tarder, mais avant que je passe la parole à Monsieur Michael Wood afin qu'il nous partage un petit mot, j'aimerais reconnaître aussi la participation d'une équipe de coordination qui est sans précédent. Je parle donc de Nathaniel Black et ainsi que de Monsieur Fred Sherman, que vous êtes sûrement entré en contact, en communication avec lui ces derniers jours. Merci beaucoup Fred et merci beaucoup Nathaniel. Alors, Mr. Michael Wood, may I please pass you the mic for a small word, and then we'll start with a question.
Absolutely. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor King for asking me to take part. I know quite a few of you on here. I do run a small business. I employ 20 people in the slow season, and our slow season is December to March, and so then we ramp up and we employ 35 people to 85 people during the busy season. So, if anybody is a small business, I appreciate where we're all at, and I'm just here to help and try and create that much of a voice for all of us. So thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wood. So a little bit of housekeeping tips. I would like, since there is actually quite a considerable number of participants and attendees, I would like to suggest please to speak for a minimum of 2 minutes if you don't see any issue. If you require to have more time, please let us know. Thank you very much. So as I said earlier, a survey has been circulating, and what I will be doing, I will ask a question, okay? And if nobody is answering the questions due to shyness or reserve or anything, I may point someone, but I don't think that it's going to be the case, right? Okay, so let's start the show. So my first question, would you please name the different challenges or identify the different challenges perceived or experienced as local business during that COVID-19 crisis? Oh, Professor Murray, please unmute yourself. Thank you.
So yeah, I don't think you'll have to worry with this group being shy about speaking. Again, Councillor King and other councillors and MPP and all of you, you know, this is a really tough period. I went back to the early 1700s, the start of the Industrial Revolution, and I could not find in the last 300 years an example of economic contraction like we're going through today. Even the Great Depression of the 1930s, which was really awful, you know, believe it or not, I am too young to remember that, but certainly my parents and your grandparents all had that experience. And the GDP and industrial production in the 1930s shrank by over 40% in Canada, the United States, and Germany, but that took 4 years. China did that in the first 3 months of this year, and Canada is going to experience something very similar right now. So what we're experiencing, you know, I hate using the words like unprecedented, but I think it really is. I could not find another example in 300 years of history. So we're all in this together, and it's very tough. Also, just as a resident of the city of Ottawa, I want to make sure that I say to everybody on council, thank you for keeping, you know, the power going. Thank you for the water supply. Thank you for all the work you do. To people who are my age and older, you know, it's amazing what you're doing. And of course, all the residents, thank you. But I did want to point out, Sandra, one issue that I think we could ask perhaps for some help. It really isn't up to the city to do it, but I think the city has a voice and it should use the voice. You know, I am a real estate investment and business coach. That's kind of what I do these days. And I have many, many, many of my small business clients who are shut down. I'll give you an example. One of the ladies, and I won't be too long, Sandra, I will wrap it up in a minute. But one of the women I coach, she has 2 pet grooming stores and a mobile pet grooming business in the area that we're dealing with today. They are completely shut down. And fortunately for her, she was eligible for the Canadian Emergency Business Account, which is a $40,000 loan, of which $10,000 is forgivable. And because her income has fallen to 0, she was also eligible for the CERB benefit of $2,000. So thank you to Canada for sure. But there is an issue that has come up with lots of the people, and I'm sure people on this call have had the same experience, which is when she went to her landlords, because she rents, and asked them to apply for the new benefit where the government of Canada has announced a program where 25% of their rent would be paid by Canada, 25% by the province of Ontario, or any province, 25% by the landlord, and 25% by the tenant. Unfortunately, her landlords are very difficult. I know because I talked to them, and they have refused to apply for that. They are asking for her to pay rents. We have in Ottawa here, one of my clients has 3 million square feet of retail space, and he called me on April 10th, and he said 90% of their stores are closed, and 100% of those couldn't pay their rent. So one of the things that would really help small businesses in all of our city would be is if this program of rent relief was mandatory for landlords as opposed to voluntary.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Firestone. Anybody? Anyone else would like to raise?
Yeah,
yes.
I'll talk. So my business, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I just opened my practice about a year ago now. And my biggest way to reach out to the community was using other local, just connecting with the community locally, like through the Beechwood Farmers Market, through local papers, and through just talking to others around and putting up flyers like at Metro and at other local businesses. And obviously now, like the farmers market's not going to be working anymore, and people aren't leaving the house as much to see these types of ads. And not only that, but my local storefront is closed, and I'm only able to offer services online. So I've had to figure out a way to shift to still be able to offer services to the community while being accessible and taking a huge kick in terms of income. So I've been finding that a way around that for me personally, while everyone is still like rallying to get support to small businesses and keep their own businesses afloat, is to offer more community-based services as opposed to targeting individuals. So I've shifted to offer online workout classes or group supports or doing like streamlined online visits. But it's been really difficult to get the word out for that because my network has completely it's completely changed, and people aren't really in the same space to go and seek services that they were 3 months ago. So I've been considering different ways that it would be helpful for the councillor or the city to help support businesses that are kind of in this space where we do have useful things to offer, but getting it out there, like the entire framework has changed. So even if there was, like, we have this roundtable, which is really amazing. So thank you so much for hosting this and having me. And we have like local listservs, which people list some services. It would be helpful if we kept maybe even like put signs out on the street of like all the local businesses that are still running, or through other bigger Facebook groups, these are the businesses that are still operating in the community, or offering some kind of local relief for local people who want to keep supporting small businesses but don't really know where to turn. Just a bigger way to reach out to the community without small businesses all working on their own, I think would be helpful.
Sandra, if it's okay, I'd like to say a couple things.
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know if somebody else is in line in front of me. I do tend to talk over people. But, so the first thing I wanted to do is just acknowledge that I'm standing on unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin territory, because we haven't done that yet. And I think this is time more than ever that we have to be acknowledging of the land that we are on, because Lord knows that that land, none of this business malarkey matters. Second thing I wanted to say is that, Colby, I feel for you. It's, you're one of many of the businesses that we represent at the BIA. We have two categories of people. We have the Louis Pizzas of the world that have pivoted and are making more money than ever, selling more box pizzas than they could ever imagine. Rima, who I speak to, I feel like on a daily basis right now, had to order pizza boxes for the first time in the 60-year history without the printed Louis on it because they just couldn't get boxes printed fast enough, So there are these great stories of resilience and pivots and all these things that we see, and there's a lot of them. Jacobson's, who had just opened up and has massive overhead, is now this fully online delivery business, which has been amazing. And Muckleston's is still surviving, and a lot of our businesses are still surviving. But there are a lot of these businesses like yours who are just trying to find footing and whose business model doesn't necessarily adapt well to this kind of online pivot, because it depends on personal touch and personal, interactions and those kind of things. And
offering food.
And offering food, right? So exactly. So the food is the one thing we know, future. I think we're all reconsidering the things that really matter. And a lot of people are doing that, business people and others. And so we're seeing this great, resilience and pivot, and we're also seeing these other things. So the Vanier BIA is part of a conglomerate of all the BIAs in the city called the COBIA. And one of the things that COBIA has been requesting, to Bruce's point, is a 6-month moratorium on any commercial evictions that would give businesses the opportunity to get through this and possibly try and rebuild, as opposed to definitely closing doors. Those are things that we know, even though there has been a lot of these programs that have been announced and so many have helped so many. We also hear a lot of stories about businesses that it doesn't help and it doesn't touch, or that aren't willing to take on the risk of, a loan, et cetera, for whatever reason, or who don't qualify for wage reduction. So, I think that there are a lot of things that we're already doing that are municipal, federal, and provincial cohorts. And gosh, I don't know that any of us have ever thought of how happy we are to be led by the people we are led by. And I know that I work very closely with all of our elected officials, and we're so grateful because I think we are actually led by people who are human, above and beyond everything, and are making those decisions based on the people they represent. And so we're very lucky for that. But unfortunately, I think we are going to see a lot of change, and we are going to see our main streets change. And we as a BIA are starting to think of what does that look like if half of our tenants are no longer tenants. And so these are the questions I think we all have to look at, first and foremost, to protect what we have. And secondly, to sort of reconsider what the future can look like in a world where, Lord knows, what the next businesses will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I definitely, I love the BIA. Like you guys serve the community so great. And as we transition into all businesses being more online focused, even beyond when restrictions are lifted, I'm thinking like something like the BIA, where we bring even more those resources together. So if you log on to the BIA website, then you can quickly access the businesses that are still operating locally. So it's more of a team thing, or just other, like the products I'm selling are all local, so that I keep supporting other local businesses. Just a quick reference so that log on to the BIA or any other source. You all do a great job.
So we have a page right now, just as a side note, we have a page which is vanierBIA.com/COVID-19. Yeah. And on there are all the resources that our businesses need, how to access provincial and federal help, and all the businesses, mostly food-based, that are still open. There wasn't until now a sort of need for medical-based businesses, but I'm so happy to add you to that today. If you are still open.
OK. Je pense que je viens de recevoir un message. Monsieur Michael Wood would like to intervene as well.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Firestone was saying. I have a friend of mine. We grew up together. Her landlord is not willing to play ball. Her landlord is not willing to help her. She's going to have the doors locked any day now. She's incredibly upset because the next economic issue that is going to hit all business owners in Ottawa, small business owners, are the personal guarantees on loans. So I know we have the representative from Minister Fortier's office here, and I did speak with Minister Fortier and Minister McKenna about this. The personal guarantees on loans that were taken out prior to COVID and prior to the government shutdown, which I completely understand. I completely understand that why we're shut down. So please don't get me wrong. But the problem is these loans were taken out prior to COVID that would have been payable, and now there's so many zero revenue businesses out there. And sure, we can have things deferred and so on and so forth. But the issue that's going to hit everybody is the banks are going to own half of Barrhaven, 3/4 of Orleans, half of Canada when this is all over, because people have their homes up. And the leases, the commercial leases that people have are personally guaranteed as well too. So we're heading to another crisis that could be even bigger than the one that we're facing right now. That's why I just wanted to bring that up with everybody.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wood. J'aimerais donner la parole à Monsieur Stéphane Béguet par rapport au plan, justement, parce que je pense qu'il y a un plan d'assistance financière et il y a qui est offert au niveau fédéral. Ayant écouté justement ces interventions-là, notamment en ce qui concerne surtout les prêts bancaires, j'ai l'impression que dans le plan qui a été proposé par le gouvernement fédéral, il y a quelque chose qui a un rapport aux prêts financiers. Am I right?
Alors, il y a, bonjour à tous, il y a un cadre fédéral sur les prêts bancaires, mais ensuite, la relation est entre le business et sa banque. Il y a les conditions d'éligibilité fédérale, et ensuite, il y a les conditions de viabilité financière de chaque business avec sa banque où le fédéral ne peut pas intervenir. C'est une chose. Concernant les loyers commerciaux par rapport aux informations que Michael vient de préciser, je prends bien soin de noter tous les points qui peuvent concerner vers le fédéral, et notre équipe va faire les recherches et revenir vers vous tous après les informations précises. Il faut ajouter que concernant l'aide d'urgence aux loyers commerciaux, d'autres détails vont être publiés, il y a d'autres choses à venir. Ce qui a été publié sur le site officiel canada.ca est une première information et d'autres choses vont venir. You want me to say in English?
That's okay. I can actually. So he said that that there are actually two aspects that needs to be considered. There is of course the government, the federal government eligibility criteria, as well as the financial viability from the bank. So those are two aspects that needs to be taken into consideration. And also he added that what has been published as per today on the Canada.ca website, there is more to follow. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Since we have,
we're going to note everything, every question you have. Feel free to. I mean, everybody at every levels of the government are working very hard. The city, province, federal, to help businesses and the seniors and students and the non-profit organization. Everybody is on the page. So, of course, sometimes it's tough to answer about everything at the same time. So feel free to ask any technical question, whatever you have, and we'll take care of it.
Okay. We also have online Mr. Jabez from Royal Bank of Canada. Do you have anything to add, regarding the different concerns that have been raised by our friends online?
Absolutely. Can you hear me well?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I wanted to first thank you very much for having me on the call. It's very important for us to be able to engage with our communities. RBC's purpose is to help clients thrive and communities prosper, and we really take that community prosper aspect very seriously. I know myself personally, it's a big aspect of my job that creates fulfillment for me. And when we look at Black History Month, all the events that I was involved in for the community, it was something that was very enriching for me. And so I think that's part of how I was able to join this call today, to kind of speak from the RBC perspective and some of the great things that we're doing as an organization to help during this COVID-19 pandemic. Firstly, we have special provisions for small businesses and for personal clients with regards to deferring payments. We've cut costs on interest. We're taking several measures there to assist with the small business loans. There's a lot that we're doing. We have a whole website dedicated to COVID-19 and RBC, and you could find the many different ways that we can help. And I think it's more important now than ever to review your finances and to talk with an advisor, because it's something that we're all kind of shouldering together, and it's a great time for advice. When we look at RBC Foundation, our $2 million response effort to COVID-19, and some of the commitments that we've already made that we're going to continue to fulfill on and honor, as well as RBC Future Launch, our $500 million contribution to youth over the next few years. We're still going to follow through on these commitments. And one of the things that was just recently announced in the news was a new online resource hub dedicated to youth for virtual programming and learning opportunities. We're looking at this from a change management perspective and new ways of doing things and imagining the future world of banking and just society at large. And everybody on the call could attest to the ways that businesses and society are changing. And we're an organization that values being quickly able to adapt. And that's what we're trying to do, get ahead in terms of managing. We're also an essential service. So we're still open to the public right now. And all of the employees, myself included, are here risking our lives to help Canadians through this tough time. So I think it's a time for unity. It's a time of coming together, sharing ideas and how we can get through this together. And I think that calls like this and people coming together around the table to strategize a way forward is critically important for our success. I know as an organization, we're doing all of these things as I just mentioned, but in addition to that, we have this Power of Purpose campaign where we're looking at our purpose of helping communities prosper and our clients thriving. And whenever we emulate that in our day-to-day work, we can send out an instant thanks, which will allow us to be in a draw where we can donate $150 to our favorite charity of choice within our community. These are just a few things that we're doing, as well as our Team RBC grants, which we always do, where we can volunteer our time and have money donated to charities. While all of those events are going to be canceled due to health and safety, we're still honoring all the approved charities. So they're still going to get that money, even without the volunteer time. When we look at some policy changes that show our innovative approach around how we're donating to charities. Before, the policy stated that you could only get 20% of the grants going to operational expenses. That has been increased to 50% to help supporting staff and helping through these tough times. These are just a few of the things that we're doing right now as an organization. And I'm sure if we spoke to our PR people, we could tell you a lot more about all this stuff. But just from a person who lives in the Ottawa community, born and raised here, somebody working with the community, I'm really happy to be on this call to try to figure out how we can come together through these tough times and make this a better place. I wanted to thank Rawlson King for having me. I collaborated with him during Black History Month, and it was a great experience. And I'm looking forward to more things like this where we can really come together and help our community. And then lastly, just to speak to the innovative and creative approach that we're taking as an organization to show that we're a listening company and we want to take the ideas of the people working with Canadians every day into account. So that goes to the top of the house where the executives are there designing our strategies. And we have this thing called the Quick Pitch Challenge where we can put forth ideas to improve our business and our community. And I know I personally created a team. This is all extracurricular, by the way, to have like an RBC community center. This is just an idea that I was thinking about, and it's just an example of how we have this opportunity to present these ideas to the executives of the company who are laying things out. So I know I'm personally passionate about the Ottawa community and doing everything that I can to help and support. If anybody wants advice from a financial perspective or they need any help with anything, I'm more than happy to set you up with one of our advisors for help. If you wanted to know more about the release efforts and all the things that we're doing as an organization, I'm happy to share about that as well. Just wanted to thank everybody for joining the call and putting your time into this important matter.
Thank you very much, Jabez. I'm going to now give the mic to Sonia Elliot. And right after, it's Mr. Firestone, who also asked to have a last word before leaving the online conference. Sonia?
Thank you. Is my mic unmuted?
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Wonderful. So just very quickly, going back to Mr. Firestone's comments about the difficult landlords. So I was noticing, I was just doing a quick Google search. Look, I know very well that for residential tenancies, they have adjusted the rules to take into consideration, that people have lost their jobs. So at the moment, no evictions can be, there'll be no eviction hearings, so there'll be no evictions. They encourage people to pay rent, but if you can't, there'll be no evictions. And so I'm just wondering about the inconsistency between commercial and residential. I was doing a quick look and I didn't see anything very clear. There are no changes for commercial, and I just don't understand why there would be that incongruency. Like commercial tenants, of course, would have the same struggles as residential. So I'm not sure about that. And I appreciate that this is unprecedented. We have not dealt with something like this before. So all of the reaction to this is evolving. So I appreciate that. But there are some obvious incongruencies, like the residential versus commercial tenancy. Why that would be, I'm not sure. And also with regards to banking, the response from banks in terms of mortgage deferrals, that is helpful. However, I think that it is difficult because, as we pointed out, Nathalie was saying that some businesses have exploded in this time and others have just completely reduced to zero in terms of income. So I think perhaps, and I know banks are large, they have many clients, but it is difficult to try and apply a one-size-fits-all rule to everyone. And I appreciate the how enticing that is. It's easy, however, everyone is not in the same box and not in the same struggle. So if there was some way that banks, in terms of how they're responding to financial support, maybe might be able to categorize a bit more, might make a little more sense to avoid some of the catastrophe, the imminent catastrophe coming that Michael Wood was speaking of earlier. So that's all that I have to say about that.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Before actually giving the mic to Mr. Firestone, it would be actually good to see the percentage of small businesses in the world and to see how many are actually impacted and may face that kind of situation in the coming days if the situation does not evolve. So then we'll actually go out of that, problematic of one size fits all. So yes, Mr. Firestone.
Well, thank you again, Sandra. Councillor King, is it okay if I spend about 4 or 5 minutes just talking at a little bit of a higher level?
Yeah, just briefly, I know that we have others. I see James and I see Luc, and I'd like to hear from them, of course.
Yes.
And then obviously, as well as our elected officials, as we get closer to the end of the call. So
Right.
if you can.
I won't be very long, but
Okay.
I just thought I would, I have to, unfortunately, I have to leave the call shortly, and I just wanted to do what I can to contribute. So I'll just take a few minutes and then I'll get out of your way. I think because I have a few councillors here and an MPP and a few others on the call, I think that I know the City of Ottawa is heading towards creating a new official plan, hopefully for next year, but now it might be delayed. And one of the things that I think this whole experience has pointed out to us is how important it is to make our community more self-reliant. And I know everybody on the call has heard the expression. It's kind of corny, but I think it's true. God only helps those who help themselves. So I think that as we get closer to coming up with a new official plan, I think we would be wise to follow Barcelona's example. Barcelona announced a plan even before COVID-19 to become much more independent in everything, in food production, in energy and waste, even in manufacturing. And I think Ottawa should look at our official plan with a new sort of a lens, if you will, that makes us more resilient. And I'll just give you a couple of quick examples. Some of my clients in the United States and across Canada are looking at introducing the ability for people to have micro suites in their homes so they can take in elders. So rather than putting our elders in long-term care facilities or retirement homes, let's bring them back into the community. But this needs some help from the City of Ottawa in terms of our official plan and our bylaws. The City of Ottawa changed our official plan in 2016 to allow coach houses. Micro suites is another thing that I think we should look at, again, to make us more self-reliant. It's very expensive to live in a retirement residence. One of my best friends is 90. He lives in a retirement residence. He pays $5,500 a month. I think we can do better than that. And the greatest generation, in my opinion, ever is dying from COVID-19 because they're literally in a ghetto. And every time we ghettoize people, whatever, poor people, old people, whatever kind of folks, it is generally we're in a worse situation. So that would be one suggestion I have. The next suggestion is, again, an official plan kind of thing. I don't think we should be building any more office buildings, Councillor King, unless if somebody comes to the City of Ottawa and wants to build a 500 workstation office building or 1,000 workstations, I don't think we should let him or her or them build that unless they also provide an equal number of studio apartments. We should be able to live and work in these same buildings. And I think the councillors on this call and others should at least be thinking about that. It will certainly help us reduce our greenhouse gases if we can live and work in the same place as we are all doing now, and it will also make us more resilient. A couple of other things I would say, just a couple quick points, and then I really will get off. And again, I apologize, Councillor, for taking too much time. One of the things that I've seen other cities do, and this might really warm you up, all of you, is they've created their own currency. And I'll just give you an example. I'm going to share my screen very briefly with you so you can see it. I think you should be able to see my screen here. Let's see if I can get it. Can you see my screen, Sandra?
Yes.
And you can see that Calgary has its own dollar, and there's the Kawartha Loon and Salt Spring, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that I was going to recommend, I have in fact recommended to Steve Willis at the City of Ottawa and others, is that Ottawa is going to create its own dollar. I call it the O-Town dollar. And the reason for that is, even before COVID-19, it was to support the good works. You know, young people who need startup capital, or single moms who need a little bit more spending money, or volunteers. Today, it would be disaster relief. And we could actually provide, it's perfectly legal, a grow local, a buy local currency. And I wanted to encourage the City of Ottawa to consider these kinds of ideas so that we could become more resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Bruce. That's a really wide array of inputs, which that's the reason for this call. I think some exciting ideas, especially around the official plan. As we know, the major blueprint around land use. I think the good news is, at least from the community standpoint, is that people are seeing the focus of resiliency as being very important now based on what has occurred. So I'm always excited about what's going on in Ward 13 in terms of resiliency. We've had a group of residents in the Rockcliffe area, in the Linden Lee area, who've actually gotten together and said, you know what we're going to do is we're going to purchase food. So they're raising money to purchase food from local businesses to therein donate that food directly to the food bank. And I mean, we're having a lot of innovative ideas that are emerging because of the challenges around COVID-19 and a true focus on resiliency of communities. So I thank you for those inputs. I think that they're definitely valid. The idea of mixed use neighborhoods is a valid debate that we are going to be having within the next upcoming weeks around the official plan, and we're looking forward to hearing those inputs from residents and having those discussions.
Last point I'll make is I woke up on Good Friday on the Easter long weekend, and Nathalie Carriere has all the details. I decided, Councillor, to reboot a course I gave at the Sprott School of Business and the Telfer School of Management. So starting next month, I am going to train a whole new core of young entrepreneurs and maybe not so young entrepreneurs, people who want to pivot away from what they're doing now. And the course is actually called Pivot. So Nathalie has all the details on that. If there are any young entrepreneurs who would like in your council, in your ward or any other ward, who would like to come and study with me for 3 months, I'll help them start a new business.
We appreciate that. And I think that's what's necessary, that entrepreneurial push. I know that Luc is driving that. So I'm hoping that Luc briefly does mention what he's doing and what the needs of his community are.
Well, Luc, I'll put, Nathalie has all the details, but I'll put the details on the Pivot course in the chat box so everyone can see it. I'll probably train, I've trained about 1,500 entrepreneurs, not just in Ottawa, but across Canada and the United States, and I'm going to train a bunch more. And thank you very much again, everybody, for letting me go on a little bit too long.
Thank you very much, Professor Firestone.
Thank you.
So since we still have not heard about, from Luc, Chris, or James, and I would like, before actually, because I can see that we have received a question on Facebook, but I will provide it after you have actually que vous auriez intervenu. Alors, la question, que pensez-vous de la réouverture progressive des commerces qui a été proposé par le gouvernement provincial de l'Ontario. So what are your thoughts on the gradual reopening approach being proposed by the Ontario provincial government? So I'm going to start with Luc.
Merci. Merci beaucoup, Rawlson King, de m'avoir participé à cette conversation. Thank you very much, Sandra. For me, for my community, just to give you guys a little bit of background where I am, I'm Luc from the Ottawa Black Business Alliance. We've been on function for the last 4 years. What we've been doing here, and especially in Vanier, our office is at 235 Montreal Road. We're above Mona Fauci's office. What we've been doing for the last 4 years, we've been doing some research on our community and to bring the number to see how we can help our community. At this time, this moment there, our community already having some struggle financially with business already. And now on top of the pandemic right now, what's going on, now is more trouble. So what we've been doing from the last month there, we've been trying to invent to put more tools online. We've been creating a media where we've letting people know to use our platform so they can, if they have any thought, they can discuss with the other community to making sure that, we can have a voice also. And my organization, we've been working with some, we're a nonprofit also, working with some kids aged from 16 to 29 and trying to get them more involved to create business and helping the mom and pop. The challenge we're having right now is that we know, especially for African Caribbean, we have a big base in Vanier, and because of the, I would say not the lack of the tools we don't have, and we know everything is changing right now with the technology and things like that. So my question is, I don't know if the city or the government will be able to help us to move that way, because we know things is changing, right? We know the way we're doing things before, I don't think we were going back to normal. So I'm just asking there, to help my community, see if we can get some more help. A lot of us there, I know we don't have the capital, we're not big business. If I take an example of the barber shop, now they're all closed. They don't know when they will be able to reopen. Is that something we think we can do to help those business? I know Nathalie and the BIA, I know they're working hard. I think everybody's trying to help, and especially us in Vanier. I'm talking Vanier because this is where I am. This is where I'm focusing a lot, because majority of our business there are in Vanier. It's just to see if that's a way that we can help those small business.
And just
to come back, sorry?
Briefly, Luc, I just wanted to say that I've been on numerous calls, not just for the city staff and with people in the ward geographically, but I've also, for obvious reasons, have been on a lot of calls with the Black community and the racialized communities. And we've heard those requests, and we want to forward some of those requests on. So we've heard requests around barbershops where they pay their employees, not as employees, but as contractors. And so some of those people have fallen through the cracks with the federal programs that are targeted for people who receive salaries. So we are hearing those challenges, and especially the challenges around access to a credit. We know that is more challenging for Black business proprietors to get access to that capital, to that credit. And that's just challenging in regular times. So there are items that we are noting, and our plan is to obviously advance some of those concerns from different forms that we've been cataloging to our senior orders of government. The good news is that we have people around this table who meet all the time, the elected officials, and we are relaying constituent concerns, like those types of concerns, to the higher levels of government for consideration. And the wonderful thing is that, Mona Fortier is willing to do that. Lucille, who's on the call, is willing to do that. They're listening, and it's really important. And we have an open dialogue, and we are going to obviously report some of the challenges that some of the communities have, and see if we can get some action. The last point I'm going to say is that because the governments are working so closely together, they're asking for those inputs from our constituents. I know Tim is hearing that, Matt is hearing those same items, and they're relaying those up. You know, we are getting response on certain files, and we're seeing evolution in terms of certain you know, financial programs that occur with the federal government as people identify the gaps. So what we're trying to do personally, I'm trying to identify those gaps and at least bring those issues forward to our representatives in the senior orders of government.
Étant donné que le temps est en train de nous manquer, là, je vais demander à ce que les autres participants aussi puissent intervenir, notamment James et Chris. Je vois que Monsieur Mathieu Fleury veut aussi prendre la parole, mais est-ce qu'on peut attendre que nos deux participants puissent s'exprimer sur la réouverture graduelle de l'économie, et puis quelles sont leurs craintes et quelles sont les opportunités aussi qu'ils peuvent voir là-dedans. Alors, may I ask Chris to actually, you know, I don't know, make any recommendation, any questions, any fears when it comes to the gradual reopening of the economy?
Yeah, first fear should be all three politicians. Jabez is gonna run next time. Well-spoken, good ideas. I like where he's coming from. I'm gonna come at this from a different angle, solutions-based. The Beechwood market had to make, much like Michael's operation, we are a seasonal event. Yeah, so we were outdoors, so we had to make the shift to online. I made that decision 3 weeks ago, so we're gonna move everything online. Unfortunately, fortunately, we have a roster of 50 vendors that we support. Half of them couldn't make the shift for various reasons, so that's unfortunate. But those that are still with us are going to come along for the ride. We're still waiting. We're going to do a sort of a pickup, a click and collect, if you will. So we're still waiting on where that location might be. Yeah, I think as far as I'm going to just speak. I'm not going to repeat what some might say about the Ontario the release. I'm just going to speak from a farmers market perspective that I honestly think it was a bit irresponsible to just throw out, you know, farmers markets. Yeah, go ahead and operate and enforce the rules. Very difficult to do. The actual operation of it, incredibly difficult to do. You're going to rope off an entire park or parking lot, allow a certain amount of numbers, cattle prod people to stay 6 feet apart from each other, ask them not to engage with vendors. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So hence another reason why we're moving online as well. As far as the city, thank you for all the help so far. I would ask in much along the same lines as deferring taxes that we operate in a city park, for example. It's not allowed right now, but if it does become later on, I would ask that those fees be just scrapped for the year. That would help us out a lot. And we're obviously, by making the move online, we're incurring a lot more expenses that we've never seen before. Like, I didn't know paper bags were so expensive. Who would have thought? But there we are. That's what I've been discovering. And then the question as to what can government keep doing? I think government should have been bolstering small businesses the whole time anyway. This has just kind of kicked things into gear. Answer an email. Since I do have Madame Coyard, I wrote your office last week, and I wrote Mona's last week. I haven't heard back from either of you. Maybe that's a week. I know you're busy and all that, but I was asking for a little bit of extra help. Mathieu has been great in securing or helping out with a possible location. So I would just ask for all three levels to get right down deep into the grassroots with us.
Okay, parfait. Thank you very much, Chris. Excuse me. Can I please ask Mathieu?
Has to run.
Yes.
So I just want to see if he has 2 minutes that he can spare for us.
There you go. Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Yes,
thank
we
you,
can hear you.
Thank you, Sandra and Rawlson. Merci à tous. Sorry I have to run. I have a 2 o'clock meeting, so I'll be very short. On the releasing of the rules, I have to say to you, it has to be based on science. It can't be an emotional plea on a economic situation. So I have no element other than to say that from my perspective, it cannot be political. It needs to be communicated It needs to be communicated well and as much as possible in advance. But opening to then having to reclose in 2 months from now is not any better for any of us. So I rely heavily on our federal public health and then locally our public health agency. And just to clarify that the province of Ontario has not laid out its plans yet. The province of Quebec has. I'm critical of it personally. I'd love for us to follow what BC's doing. When you see BC's COVID response, it's been a top notch. But let's wait and see what our premier provincially says. Now, and the provincial health agencies. One of the things I want to bring to the table that we're advocating for, and it relates to public banking. The governments have, over the years, created environments like CMHC, like Infrastructure Ontario, that are basically shell for stimulus funding to facilitate investments. We all know that small business community has incurred a lot of cost and financial pressures over this period, which will extend to 3, 4, 5 months. Yet a lot of the programs are deferrals, and those deferrals are the fall. So if we really want to kickstart and just turn back the small retailers, I really strongly believe, as per many of the organized business agencies in the city, including OBBA, and I know Mark Koleski is listening in, that we should have a public agency create a loan program. And the loan program would cover the rents, would cover some of the costs that our business community have today. And the loan program with interest could be covered over the next 5 years, just so that those property taxes, those utility costs, those rent costs, even if there's programs here and there, could just be pushed off into a loan environment and paid back over a 5-year period. So we know how important the April 1st to October 1st period is for most businesses in terms of their revenue. And we know how we're chewing away every day at that based on the issues of closure. So we've conveyed that to and worked with our business community to convey that to the province specifically, as the liaison to the business community is really provincial jurisdiction. And we are also at the city, with the lead of Steve Willis, have an economic task force. And Steve Willis has had conversation with the leaders in the business sector to mention that. So a lot of things on the go. There's a lot of great programs that are available provincially and federally. But additionally, in terms of the banking sector can have a relief element, and the 40,000 is a great measure of that. But all of the hard costs in terms of utilities, rents, and the deferrals of some of the property taxes could be relieved with some sort of loan agency.
Thanks, Matt. You actually wrapped up some of the things that I was going to say, so that's actually quite helpful.
We work well together.
Yes.
Sorry, I got to run.
Next door neighbor.
Merci beaucoup. Bye bye.
Yes,
okay. So James, since you're the last one, you're the person who has not talked yet. So any input, any recommendation, or any would you like to raise on challenges, experience, or even practical ideas?
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for actually putting this together, Rawlson, and everyone, all of our elected officials. This is great. Some of the things I definitely, with Mathieu, to stay on the Ontario opening of businesses, I'm of the opinion that, I think we need to definitely open based on science, but more importantly, I think it goes without saying, we probably need to be investing in public health, so that there's even plans like when we do open up, and there will be, you may not call them waves, you could just call them bursts of infections occurring. It'd be really nice to know for everyone, like the public, on how we will handle those, moving forward. So I think I mentioned that in my comments, that we really need to be kind of putting a lot of resources in that regard. Something that, and for us with the company that, like with Compass Rose and the kind of work that we're doing, we've been very fortunate that we haven't been impacted And one thing that seems to have come up quite a bit, at least with us and other companies, is that, or other people that we've talked to, is the idea of health childcare during all of this, like with the schools closed as well as daycares closed. The onus, really, it's falling on businesses, and a lot of them would even be small businesses, are kind of indirectly subsidizing for all that, and that we have lost productivity from our employees, right? And I think we've seen it too. You're hearing, so that might be as much. I think we need probably have some continue, maybe in the mental health area, you know, with the city, and to some supports, but even to acknowledge that this is a big thing that, you know, and that people should look, hopefully have avenues in which they can go in order to get help, right?
Yeah. And James, I want you to know that just yesterday, my office actually had some discussions with a group that is an advocacy group on behalf of childcare providers and parents.
Right.
So we've had those discussions, and that's the wonderful thing about the way that your elected officials, at least in Ottawa-Vanier, are working together. I'm going to share some of that conversation that we had on Monday, including some of their recommendations. And we share them amongst our colleagues, and then we see you know, what makes sense and what we can do, and what needs to be recommended. So that is definitely an issue. That is a challenge, and I just want you to know that you know, our offices, we're as busy as ever working with community on all of these challenges.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, James.
Yeah.
And I would like also to raise the question that we had on Facebook before, because we're approaching the end of the conference, and I know that Rawlson King said that he would like to wrap up at around 2:15 or 2:20ish. So yes. So for the question, well, it's not really. It says okay. It is well that the person is talking about the Montreal Road revitalization compound and the impact, the COVID situation impact on that project. Any thoughts on that? So we have.
I can address that. I sit on the committee for Montreal Road Revitalization, and I sit on weekly meetings about the impact. So whilst it's obviously a concern for businesses, it's something that we've been preparing our businesses for a very long time now. It's not something that just came up out of nowhere. There have definitely been some impacts on businesses, but we have a very solid relationship with the city and with Tomlinson now that it has been awarded the contract, and we are assured that whilst there is some impact, that there is never going to be a situation where access to those businesses will be closed. It may be more challenging, but most of our businesses understand that this is our mal pour un bien, which is the French translation for sometimes it's got to get yucky to get better. And, you know, the unfortunate thing about the current state of Montreal Road, and a lot of people don't understand this, but the very infrastructure that feeds our community, the water mains, the gas lines, are so old that it prevents new buildings to be, you know, to be erected or retrofits to happen. It prevents specific kinds of businesses like restaurants that need high gas volumes, for example, to cook, to actually open up. And so a lot of people don't realize literally the underlying issues that revolve there. And so, you know, it started, you know, we're right in the middle of it. There was an issue this week, for example, where a water main was affected, and it affected some of our businesses, but it was dealt with quickly and efficiently. And our businesses are, you know, informed. They've all been invited to become block captains and be aware. There's regular communication that goes out to those businesses. So whilst impact cannot be avoided at this point, we do feel that we are mitigating the level to which those businesses will suffer, at least we hope. It doesn't help now that we're in a pandemic, but in fact, it has helped the construction, because the traffic on Montreal Road has been shorter, and we've actually gotten ahead on a lot of things. So, you know, it's a give and take, but that's,
okay.
I don't know if the councillors wanted
Thank
to
you.
add something to that,
Merci beaucoup, Madame Carrier. Moi, ce que j'aimerais, c'est que j'aimerais donner la parole à Councillor Tim Turney, vu que le temps est en train d'être court. Et puis ensuite de ça, bien sûr, après conseiller Tim Turney, j'aimerais entendre aussi Madame Madame Lucille Collard, et ensuite Monsieur Rawlson King, vous pourriez donner le mot de la fin. Alors, Tim Turney, about that question, what is your reaction?
Let's just make sure you're unmuted.
Oh.
There we go.
No.
All right.
There we go.
Merci. First of all, yes, it's good to see, and you're quite correct, and I want to thank Madame Carrière. I think you succinctly put it. There definitely is a good relationship between the people that are actually constructing the roadway, and you're quite correct with the lowered traffic volumes. It actually kind of helps. Look, we all look for silver linings and things, and I think that certainly would be one of them. I did want to I don't want to take a lot of time. We're at 12 after 2. I did want to reiterate and thank Rawlson. Matt had to jump on another call. Lucille, Minister Forche, we're working very close together. We started this whole process like 7 weeks ago, where we started having video calls, if not twice a week, at least once a week, to make sure, because it's like drinking from the fire hose. There's so many announcements, and we want to speak with the same voice. And we've been doing that. We've actually challenged some businesses, and I won't name it because it was kind of a hot situation, where they saw this as an example to kick out their tenant. And we all wrote them basically saying this wouldn't be advised at this point, because simply, first of all, it would look very bad from a landlord perspective. But second, you're not giving the opportunity for this business to survive. And it's a pretty prominent one in the neighborhood. So that being said, I'll leave it at that. I know MP Collard probably has some words as well, and I just want to thank Rawlson again.
I actually do want to thank you, Tim, for that. We are trying to stand up and defend the interests of our small businesses. We know that those are the lifeblood of our community, and I'm happy that you can comment a little bit on Montreal Road being our new chair of transportation committee. A lot of transportation, infrastructure, public works are going ahead, and those will also hopefully be the basis for some of the recovery after COVID. So absolutely. I'm really pleased and happy that you could participate.
No,
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Turney. Alors, bon, l'avant-dernier mot de la fin, c'est à vous, Madame la députée Collard. Vous avez entendu les interventions, vous avez entendu les inquiétudes, et vous savez pourquoi est-ce que Rawlson King est en train justement de faire cette table ronde. Alors, à vous la parole.
Merci, Sandra, and thank you, Rawlson, for inviting me to this. It's really a pleasure to get to see you, not to meet you in person, and some of you I already know, because I've been involved in the community before becoming an MPP. Of course, we all do understand the importance of the survival of our small businesses. It's important for our community, and all the efforts, that we need to make, nothing's going to be spared in trying to help each and every one of you. And I've taken, in consideration and notes of all your concerns. Of course, the essential of my job these days has been to, of course, meet with a lot of people virtually to try to listen to what the issues are and try to bring those concerns and solution proposals to the government. And we've done that, with the Liberal caucus with some success. And I'll just name, the electricity rate, allowing the delivery of alcohol for the restaurants that are doing deliveries, and the rent assistance program was something that we had been requested for a long time. So I'm glad that something is on the table, and I understand that, it's going to develop over time. So we need to stay tuned. I do note the concern about the fact that, it needs to be mandatory because some of the landlords seem not to be very cooperative and trying to giving some relief to the tenants. So I'm taking that under advice. I wanted to flag also something that the government, the provincial government just put online, and it's to help businesses, and it's really for the businesses to go online and make suggestion on some red tape or regulatory requirements that would help the businesses. So basically they're asking you, what can we do in terms of regulations or cutting any of the red tape that would assist you? So it's a portal for you to go in and put in your own suggestions. So just want to say that, I'm happy to support in any way I can to advertise any of the news that you may want me to do. And also, yes, I'm receiving a lot of emails, and I've got a very, very small team, and I'm doing my best to respond in the most effective manner, and I'll continue to do that. And I don't know if you're hearing some of the back noise. I'm actually in my office on Montreal Road because that's the only way for me to be working effectively, because at home I got 4 kids, a husband, my mother, and a dog. So I wouldn't be able to do any work. I'm by myself pretty much here at the office. But the construction is
A
going.
hero amongst women, a hero amongst.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, and I do echo Nathalie's comments about the effectiveness of what they've done. Like we had the water cut off earlier this week because of the main water that broke, but it was fixed in a matter of hours. So yeah, kudos for all the collaborative work. So again, thanks to all of you, and don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here for all of you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Madame Collard. Bon, on arrive vraiment à la fin. We're getting to the end of the very interesting roundtable, where there was actually very rich interventions. And what I liked about it is the fact that you brought, yes, problematic, but also you came up with recommendations and solutions. I believe that it's sorry, what is Mr. Foreman? Is it Mr. Foreman? No, Firestone. Sorry, Firestone has provided a few links on the chat. In the chat room. So Nathaniel, if you could actually take note of that, it would be greatly appreciated. So Mr. King, now you have heard them. Nathaniel has actually took note of everything. Now, what are you going to do with that?
Well, the key thing is that we are listening. We are obviously recording all comments that come in. We eventually get to it. I have to agree with Ms. Collard with COVID-19 and the crisis that has emerging. We're actually working more than ever. I find that some days are 6 to 6, where we are either on meetings or responding to correspondence. We don't have those community events, but we are primarily trying to fill the gap with virtual town halls like this. I think the key for us is ensuring that we get the richest amount of input from our community as possible, especially our small businesses. We understand that small businesses are the lifeblood of our community. They are the driving force of our economy, and we just want to ensure that people know that we are 4 square behind our small businesses. We can't really have a functioning community without functioning businesses. So what we are doing is we are asking for your input. We held this roundtable so that we could have those inputs on a regular basis. We are asking people to email our office, contact us through our Facebook page, contact us through our social media presence such as Twitter. Tell us what your concerns and challenges are in terms of your businesses, because we are meeting, just as Tim and Matt and Lucille have said, and Mona as well, on a regular basis. And we are taking those constituent concerns to the senior levels of government. If we see concerns that we can address at the city level, we'll make those questions of staff. But the key thing is that we are here for you during this time, because we want to ensure that the viability of our existing businesses, as well as businesses in the future, remain that bedrock of Rideau-Rockcliffe, of Hill-Cyrville, of Rideau-Vanier, of all of our communities. So we're here for you. What we're saying is that we want to hear that input as much as possible, and we want to relay any gaps that we see in terms of the programming that is coming out, and see if we can help fill those gaps. And I just want to say, in wrapping up, I've heard this multiple times, but it's the truth. In terms of the challenges that we are facing, it is amazing that in Canada, in our city, all levels of government come together and work cooperatively. These are real challenges. To address one other question, our decisions are going to be based on evidence. And that's key for us. Quality data, quality medical information. will be drivers of those decisions that are made. And one of the other key drivers is our residents in our city. And we want to listen to you and we want to respond. And Canada has been exemplary. It's one of the only industrialized countries that have had this type of comprehensive economic response to disaster. South of us, there aren't as many benefits that are emerging in Canada. And Canada is trying to ensure that we can really get through this crisis intact, as much as intact as possible, and with better public health outcomes as possible. So we're working hard every day, all through this crisis for you. Please ensure that you keep in contact with us.
Okay.
I'm so sorry I have to go, but thank you so much. I love this so much.
Thank you very much for your insight. Thank you. Very appreciated. So yes, so we're now at the end of our, roundtable. Thank you very much for your participation. So Nathaniel has taken notes, and a report will be made. Fred, would you like to make a comment on what we will be doing after that in terms of of a report or communication?
Yeah, just trying to figure out how to unmute. First of all, this was just brilliant. I had a wonderful, learned so much, and obviously thanks to all the panelists for just such valuable information. And Nathaniel, I hope you kind of grab that copiously. What we're going to be doing is we're probably trying to have a couple of pages for you guys sometime soon, anywhere from 3 to 5, that kind of captures and synthesizes, perhaps with a little bit of analysis in terms of what the messages that are being conveyed here. And also want to let you know, if you want to add anything else, feel free to submit a one-pager, a paragraph, a sentence, what have you. You can send it to me and I'll make sure it's reflected in there, anything you feel strongly about. But by and large, like I said before, nobody to kind of offer any narrative, but just in these interesting times, it's just good for us to kind of gather together. Obviously, Councillor King, thank you so much for your initiative here as a constituent. You know, my councillor is right there, Tim Tierney, so good to see you there as well. But just as someone who's engaged as a local business owner myself, just we're going to do our best to kind of, my role is twofold, obviously to make sure that our political representatives get the kind of information they need to kind of voice our concerns and advocate for our interests better. But for me, just learning and to see that. So thanks, and great to be a part of it. The reports will be prepared. We'll get it to you guys. Feel free to submit anything else you want to. And I think that's my 10 cents.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So should we close the conversation? It was quite good. We could go for longer than that, I think. But thank you very much for your participation, and hopefully we'll be able to meet up with better news, success stories out of that crisis. Alors merci beaucoup. Passez une excellente journée.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Merci.